Hi everybody, my name is Jennifer Walsh, and I'm here to talk to you about the endangered Ozark big-eared bat, where it lives, some of the resources of the ecoregion, and some of the issues this species in this region are currently facing. So the Ozark big-eared bat was first listed as endangered in 1979 when assessors of this species realized there were only a few hundred left. They later found another cave location that hosted a separate population of several hundred. Estimates from yearly counts range currently from 1,600 to 1,800 bats. This bat exists in a very small region in North America, covering 6 counties between Oklahoma and northwest Arkansas, and another very small isolated population in north-central Arkansas. This species was entirely extirpated from Missouri. This map gives you an idea of how small their range is in a global context. That little shaded bubble with the arrow pointing to it, that is the only place this bat exists in the world. Here we see the current distribution of CT engines. That big bubble shows the population that covers an area between Oklahoma and Arkansas. The dots within these bubbles show known hibernaculae and maternal caves currently in use. As you can see here, the distance and isolation between this population and the north-central Arkansas population is fairly large. Any dots that are outside of these population bubbles show historic use cavern locations that have since been abandoned or extirpated. As you can see, the range of this species has gotten smaller and more isolated. So this area in the Ozark Plateau is very mountainous and historically forested. The topography is karst, which is created from the dissolution of soluble rock like limestone or dolomite. This creates caves, sinkholes, and underground drainage systems that can be quite vast. This karst topography is what makes this region suitable for these bats and other species also reliant on cavernous habitats. Natural gas, agriculture, and cattle farming have all been primary land uses historically for much of this region, and it is very sparsely populated as well historically. Timber has also been a huge source of revenue for this region, which opened up much of this land for agricultural purposes. So because of the mountainous terrain, the soils we mainly see in this area are typically low permeability, high runoff soils, with typically high clay and rock contents. They are generally not great for agriculture and require extensive work to manage. Predominantly, we see the Elsa soil series, which is an entisol. These soils are typically floodplain soils that form when runoff happens more rapidly than soil development does. These soils have little to no horizons. In this area, these soils are typically used for pasture or farming. The second most dominant soil type in this ecoregion is an ultisol. These soils are extensively weathered in humid regions, which leads to a very clay-rich subsoil, usually full of minerals like quartz and iron oxides. This soil holds its nutrients in the top few inches, making it incredibly difficult to grow in. Other common soil types include mostly entisols, but also some inceptisols and more ultisols. Inceptisols are generally only moderate in development. Average precipitation in this region is between 39 and 52 inches annually. This plays a large part in the development of these particular soil types in conjunction with the topography. The diversity in this area is incredibly rich. It would be difficult to list all of the plant life in a timely manner, so I'll go over some of the basics. This is a temperate broadleaf and mixed forest region. What this means is that there are an abundance of hardwoods like oak and hickory, as well as pine. Now, only 3% of this habitat remains untouched and unaltered, but what is still intact are old-growth forests of at least 80 years or older. The diversity of wildlife is just as rich in this location as the plant life. So a really cool fact that was addressed in the Ozarks Ecoregional Conservation Assessment is that a major contributing factor for the extreme biodiversity we see in this region is that parts of the Ozarks have been continuously available for plant and animal life for about 230 million years, which makes this region possibly the oldest continuously exposed landmass in North America and one of the oldest on Earth. Common and notable species are listed here. So in the 1920s, the state placed bounties on all apex predators, which extirpated wolves and drastically reduced mountain lion and black bear populations to near local extinction. This created some imbalances in the trophic web, including an overabundance of scavenging animals and overcompetition of resource. There have been some moderate successes with black bear reintroduction, bringing the population back to about 5,000, though this is nowhere near historic levels. The Ozark Plateau is also home to two other endangered species besides CT Ingens, that being a massive salamander called the Ozark hellbender and the Ozark cavefish. Proper conservation and management of this ecoregion can also help meet conservation goals for these species as well as others that call the Ozark Plateau home. There are a few other major issues that affect this region, and in turn are detrimental to the Ozark big-eared bat. Historically, fire was a common and natural part of the ecology of this region. Over the last century, fire suppression efforts have led to a complex set of problems: overgrowth of ground shrubs and vines and other plants that outcompete others for resource, restriction of movement for wildlife, and a buildup of fuel that creates a bigger, more detrimental fires when a wildfire happens, to name a few. Increasing urbanization and habitat fragmentation are becoming an even bigger threat to this species, destroying habitat and restricting access from separate bat populations to interact, which in turn restricts genetic flow and can ultimately leave this species more vulnerable to disease. Some direct threats are habitat disturbance for recreation. During hibernation, this causes bats to wake, and when they do, they use up precious energy stores intended to hold them until spring. When this happens, they starve over winter. It can also be a cause of spreading white nose syndrome, which causes death in around 90% of exposed bats. Habitat destruction, surface hardening, hydrological alterations, and soil and water pollution are all also major concerns. Thank you for your time. For more information, please visit these resources to learn more.